Well, 3.4. Often in computer environments, passwords are automatically generated, and sometimes usernames too, automatically generated by your network administrator with a little program or an algorithm, even just to set up the passwords initially so that there's a password. So when you log on the first time, you can change your password, etc., etc. Um, and of course, the passwords need to be unique, and it's not necessarily unique, but it's better that they're unique. But certainly the usernames all need to be unique. Otherwise, we'd have problems if two users have the same login name. So a very simple one here. They're saying, right, just take the user's initial. Okay, we're going to assume that they've only got one name to start off with here. So Zaria, and her surname is Twain. Okay, so and they would then say, right, take the user's initial, so the Z of Zaria, and add on the surname, all in lowercase, and then also add a random, because that Zaria Twain's probably not that common, but if it was, let's say, Susan Smith, you might have a number of Susan Smiths in your school. Um, so often we add on random numbers, and you'll see that in Gmail addresses as well, because you know what it's like when you ask for a particular email address that's been taken, so they just add on some digits as alternatives. Okay, so first things first, I've got to get the first character out of there. Now that doesn't seem too bad, because I know I can extract things with copy, and so I can copy the first character out quite easily. I don't think that should be an issue. And then I'm just going to join on Twain. Okay, that shouldn't be an issue either, because it's just a plus operator with strings. We'll see that now. And then this 4-digit number, okay, we might need to remind ourselves a little bit about random numbers and generating them in Delphi. So let's take it one step at a time again. Okay, so first things first, I just want to set my initial password up. Okay, so in other words, assume we're using those values. Obviously, they would have been input by the user or something like that. Okay, so assume that they're there. You obviously don't have to write that code. Okay, so they're given to you. Right, the first thing to do is produce a random number. Okay, there's a function, mathematical function called random range in Delphi, which produces a number between including with the first and the last one inclusive. Okay, 4 digits. Which numbers are 4 digits? Well, from 1000 to 9999 are the digits that you have to have. And they say what you must do there is also make sure that you add the math unit. Okay, let's have a look at that in a second, because it belongs to a specific unit. And if you just type in random range, it'll give you an undeclared identifier. So let's just quickly look. This is the program I use to actually check all those examples. And you'll see right at the top, it adds the very standard units. In other words, and that comes with various procedures and functions that you can use. And then if you need to use some of the functions, and there are one or two mathematical ones you might remember, you have to add the math function. So if you type something as a math function and suddenly it doesn't recognize it, then just remember to go and add that at the top. That's more on the side at this case. I don't think we'd expect that. Unless we asked it as a question, said, why doesn't the random range get picked up by Delphi when it's correct? Okay, but the focus on here is to say, right, let's generate a random number between 1000 and 9999, because then it's going to be a 4-digit number, and it'll be different every time I run my program. Okay. That was just an aside about the math there. Okay, what can we do next then? Well, I can probably... Well, it's done all in one go. Okay, so that was a brave step there, but it's actually not that bad, because what have we got here? We said the password is equal to copy from the first name, which is this one here, copy from the first position 1 character. So that would copy the Z out. That would copy the Z out. Forget about the lowercase for this stage. Okay, we'll deal with that. That essentially puts everything in lowercase in the end. Okay, the lowercase, that bracket, it's that whole bracket over there. You might say, well, why am I lowercasing the number? It doesn't matter, because if it's a number, it's not going to bother it at all. And then I just had to add on the surname. Remember, it was Z Twain, so I just plus, and remember the plus here when we're talking about strings means concatenating or joining or plucking, like Alan says, so you just pluck it on. Daar heg jy dit aan in Afrikaans. En hier is ons nou. We're back in Delphi, and we added on, so we added on that, plus I can't just add on the random number because that's a number. It needs to be a string. So I just did a little conversion here into string. So that just simply generated the random number. Then I added on, I set up the password all in one go. You could have done it in a few steps. I said copy from the first name, the first character, add on the surname, and then add on the random number that I generated. And in a test situation or something like that, even if you can't remember how to do that part, even if you didn't know how to set up the random number, then just add it on there so that you do get credit for that. You might say, well, but I didn't know how to do it. That, you don't get doubly penalized for errors in programming. Okay, I really like 351 because it's a question that builds up into a sort of quite a nice little smallish but very nice little program. Okay, they say a team with a maximum of 9 cyclists ride in a squad, one behind the other. Okay, on roads, cyclists often do that instead of riding, well, they sometimes ride abreast as well. But in races, particularly indoor races, you'll know they ride as a team. Even in the bigger races like the Tour de France, they work as a team. So there's somebody that they designate to chase. We sometimes have that in athletics as well. We sometimes call them pace setters. But the idea is that there's somebody in the team that you rate as and the others are there to help them. Okay, in other words, so they will write a bit more of that a little bit later. I don't need to know anything about cycling to answer this question. Okay, read in the number of cyclists from a spin-edit control called seds, spin-edit squad size, and store this in an integer variable called rsize. Okay, so I've done this all in one go. Rsize is equal to spin-edit squad size dot value. Okay, it's not dot text. Okay, edit boxes have dot text. And now there's no conversion needed as value is an integer property. Okay, there's no conversion needed. So I've got the size, they said, and we could set, in the spin edit, it's nice because you can set the range with the spin edit that the person can input. So they can only input from 1 to 9 or from 2 to 9 because you want a squad. It doesn't really make sense if there's only one person in it. So you could set that all up so there would automatically be some error checking in the control itself. But they don't tell us to check for anything, so we're just accepting that that's the correct value that comes in. Right, okay, 352. The cyclist numbers must be stored consecutively. In other words, you just number them from 1 onwards in a string variable. Should be called S-team. For example, if there's 6 cyclists in the team, in other words, rsize, which you just read in now, 6, then the string S-team would look like that. So it would have 6 characters in it. So it would have the characters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And similarly, if there were 9 cyclists in the team, which was the maximum size, then the team would look like this. So you just enter them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you could write a suitable loop to set up the string. Okay, so you just enter them in there, and then we'll see that the order within the string will play a role a bit later. Right, so we've written a value and stored it in rsize, which is the number of cyclists, which is a number presumably 1 and 9, or probably 2 and 9 or something like that, but not exceeding 9, but that's not our problem. But we've got a value called rsize. Okay, and we want to set up a variable called steam, which has essentially got those numbers stored in them. So if it was rsize was 5, it would be 1 to 5. If rsize was 7, then we would store 1 to 7. So I'm going to need a for loop or something because it's going to go up, clearly going to go up in steps of 1. But first of all, I'm just going to make my team the blank string to start off with, because that's the finished product up there, S-team there. That's S-team with 9 riders in. Okay, so I started off because I'll probably want to add on to this S-team as I go along. But then I'm going to need a for loop which runs from 1 to the size. Okay, space in there. To the size. In other words, in our case, for example, in this particular example, from 1 to 9. And what I want to do is I want to add the number 1 on, then the number 2 on, then the number 3 on, the number 4 on, the number 5 on. But remember that I'm adding it onto a string. So I'm not adding in a mathematical sense. I'm plucking or concatenating or joining, as we said a bit earlier. So that's what I'm looking at there. S-team is equal to S-team plus. Okay, this plus means add on, join on, into string. Why am I making it into string? Because otherwise I would get an error. because I can't add a number on. iLoop's a number, but if I convert that number to a character, so it's the character 1, the character 2, the character 3, the character 4, it'll just keep on adding them on. Remember, the iLoop starts off with 1, so it'll add on 1, then it'll add on 2, then it'll add on 3, and it'll go all the way up to our size. Okay, that's going to be a so we've now managed to get the size of the team and store them in a variable called steam, which we're now going to use a little bit further.